Pay attention to this woman, Colleen Campbell, caught on CCTV walking out of a VW Tigane on June 29, 2022. Minutes later, she storms into a planned ambush, wielding a hammer. What you're about to witness is a brutal 90-second assault. Another body blows. Screams echo. She drags the victim to the pavement while her accomplices rain down kicks. Then, just as suddenly, they vanish into the night. 3 days later, the real terror begins. Colleen orchestrates the torture and murder of her ex-husband, a cocaine baron whose life and death became the centerpiece of one of Manchester's darkest criminal sagas. Colleen Campbell was once just another face behind the checkout counter at a Matalan store in Manchester. Her life, by most accounts, was ordinary. A young woman from a modest background, working part-time, living off benefits, quietly dreaming of something more. But in the shadows of Manchester's underworld, her destiny was about to change forever. In 2011, Colleen crossed paths with Thomas Campbell, a charismatic figure with dangerous connections. Thomas was no street-level thug. He was rapidly rising through the ranks as a cocaine kingpin, known as much for his flashy cars and designer clothes as for the fear he commanded in local gangs. When Colleen married Thomas, she didn't just marry a man. She married a criminal empire. The couple flaunted their wealth with reckless abandon. To neighbors, they were a young family living the dream. But behind closed doors, their lavish life was paid for by dirty money and blood-stained deals. Between 2011 and 2014, Thomas expanded his cocaine network while Colleen stood faithfully by his side. By 2014, police launched Operation Harness, a deep dive into Manchester's spiraling drug trade. Investigators soon zeroed in on the Campbells. They were living far beyond their means. A Mercedes C63, a BMW X5, exotic holidays, and a newly extended house that boasted more square footage than most council homes in the area. On paper, they were nearly broke, surviving on Colleen's meager Matalan paycheck and social benefits. The double life couldn't last forever. In 2015, Greater Manchester Police escalated their operation, seizing the cars and building a money laundering case. In August 2019, both Thomas and Colleen pleaded guilty in court. Thomas served 2 years inside. Colleen's sentence, 16 months, was suspended. For a while, it seemed their empire had cracked, but not crumbled. They carried on, a fractured couple bound by secrets, children, and the residue of drug money still hidden away. But as their fortune faded, so did their love. By early 2022, their marriage was in ruins. Rumors of Thomas's infidelity spread like wildfire. Colleen, once the loyal gangster's wife, felt humiliated and enraged. She'd sacrificed her name, her freedom, her innocence, only to be betrayed by the man who made her queen of this crooked kingdom. That betrayal soon turned violent. On June 29, 2022, the world saw a glimpse of Colleen's capacity for cruelty. CCTV captured her stepping out of a VW Tigane with 3 loyal followers, each armed for chaos. Colleen clutched a hammer. In less than 2 minutes, they ambushed a woman tied to a bitter love triangle. Blows rained down, kicks landed, the hammer smashed bone. The group fled into the night, leaving behind a victim too terrified to testify. To the police, this was a shocking sign. Colleen Campbell was no longer just a gangster's mole. She was now an enforcer, a woman capable of orchestrating planned street violence, fearless enough to wield a hammer in broad daylight. Yet even that savage act was only the prologue to something far worse. Just 3 days later, on July 2nd, 2022, Thomas Campbell's fate was sealed. At his upmarket Mossley townhouse, Thomas opened his door, expecting a mundane evening. Instead, 3 masked men pounced. What happened next was so brutal that even seasoned detectives were shaken. Over several hours, Thomas was beaten, stabbed, stamped on, and tortured with boiling water poured over his bare flesh. Neighbors would later tell police they heard thuds and muffled screams, but thought it was a domestic dispute. By the time the attackers fled, Thomas lay dead in his hallway, naked except for his socks. A symbol, some say, of how the kingpin was stripped of everything at the end. While the city buzzed with gossip about who could dare attack such a feared drug boss, Colleen played her greatest role yet, the grieving ex-wife. On Facebook, she posted photo tributes, hearts, sentimental words, fake sorrow for the father of her 2 children. She joined the balloon release ceremony, posed for pictures, cried for the cameras. To friends and family, she was a widow shattered by an unspeakable loss. But behind her tears, she knew the truth, because she'd planned it. 4 days after the murder, Colleen made a baffling mistake. She visited a clairvoyant, claiming she wanted to contact Thomas's spirit. During this séance, Colleen described every grisly detail of his wounds, repeating things only the killers could have known. Later, she repeated those details to Thomas's mother, claiming he had told her from beyond the grave. But detectives had kept these details hidden from the public. So how could Colleen possibly know? Suspicion spread like wildfire. When detectives dug deeper, more chilling clues came to light, piece by piece, each more damning than the last. CCTV cameras scattered around Manchester captured moments Colleen likely thought no one would ever see. Short meetings in back streets, secret phone calls from borrowed numbers, and her subtle hand signals to the men she would soon unleash on Thomas. She didn't swing the hammer that night, but her betrayal struck harder than any weapon ever could. Investigators matched phone records showing constant late-night calls between Colleen and the hitmen in the days leading up to the attack. The evidence was undeniable, but the most disturbing proof lay hidden in her own home. A security system Colleen had installed to protect her family ended up betraying her secrets instead. The recovered audio revealed hushed conversations, coded words, and instructions about Thomas's daily routine. She knew exactly where he would be, what time he'd return home, and how unprotected he'd feel in the comfort of his own house. And she fed that information to men who didn't care how much he begged for mercy. Some say her motive was simple rage. Others believe it was humiliation. A twisted desire to punish him not just for cheating, but for daring to humiliate the queen of his kingdom. Whatever drove her, Colleen played her part perfectly in public. She mourned online, posting sweet tributes to Thomas, even as detectives read her mocking messages behind the scenes. She joined his family at vigils, shedding crocodile tears while secretly savoring the truth. She had arranged for him to die in the cruelest way imaginable. When the case finally reached court, the atmosphere was electric. The jury heard every sordid detail. How a mother of 2, who once smiled behind a shop counter, turned herself into the mastermind of a savage ambush. They listened to the story of the hammer attack days earlier, the violent ambush on an innocent woman, as proof that Colleen didn't just plot violence, she delivered it with her own hands when she wanted to send a message. And then came the séance, perhaps the strangest twist of all. Who confesses a murder plot through a psychic? Only Colleen. In that eerie room, she claimed Thomas's ghost told her secrets that, in reality, she already knew because she had arranged every moment of his torture. When she repeated those grim details to Thomas's grieving mother, the mask she'd worn for so long finally cracked. In February 2023, the verdict was clear. For the violent hammer ambush, Colleen received 18 months in prison, a sentence that would have shocked people by itself. But the bigger blow was yet to come. For orchestrating Thomas's brutal killing, she was given 13 years behind bars. A punishment some felt was far too lenient for the depth of her betrayal. The man who carried out the killing, Reese Stephen, was sentenced to life, ordered to serve at least 37 years. Another accomplice, Stephen Cleworth, received 12 years for manslaughter. And John Belfield, once the final piece of the puzzle, fled the country in a desperate attempt to escape justice. But his days of freedom were numbered too. International police hunted him down and brought him back to face trial. Today, behind the heavy steel doors of HMP Drake Hall, Colleen Campbell tries to rebuild an image of a model prisoner. Some say she's studying, attending anger management courses, and hoping for an early release. But outside those prison walls, her name lives on as a chilling reminder that envy, revenge, and bitterness can twist a seemingly ordinary woman into a manipulative mastermind of violence and death. Her story lingers as a warning for everyone that sometimes the deadliest betrayal doesn't come from a gangster with a gun, but from the person sleeping beside you, holding your secrets, waiting for the perfect moment to turn them into your worst nightmare. In the end, for Thomas Campbell, the person he trusted most became the ghost that haunted him long before he ever crossed into the afterlife. The story of Colleen Campbell is more than just a tale of drugs, betrayal, and murder. It's a grim lesson about how far bitterness can push a person when love turns to hate. A quiet shop assistant transformed into a calculating puppet master, bringing down the man who once made her feel untouchable. Thomas Campbell's empire collapsed in blood and betrayal, not at the hands of rival gangsters or police raids, but through the cold revenge of the woman he once trusted most. Today, while Colleen sits behind bars, the families on both sides still live with the scars she carved into their lives. Proof that sometimes the deadliest enemies are not strangers in the dark, but the ones smiling beside you, whispering promises they never planned to keep. If you found this story as haunting as we did, share your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think Colleen's sentence was enough for what she did? We'd love to hear your opinions. And don't forget, subscribe for more chilling true crime stories just like this. Thank you for watching, and stay safe out there.